So it seems like it's very nice to hear about how the virtue and relying on others creates happiness. And then I thought from the teaching the other night that you were saying, you were describing the qualities of the nature of mind. And it seemed like happiness was dewa was one of the qualities of the mind. So is this, is this true? What I'm understanding, that dewa is a natural quality of the mind. And then how do we touch this natural quality of the mind?
나서 쌤이 랑지 세나?
So when we talk about this nature of mind, it's something that we ordinarily have. It's just there. All sentient beings, in this life that we have, in order to sort of make use of the mind that we have, we often use like a mistaken mind in a mistaken way. So what is this mistake that we have? Because just naturally, we all have a position. We all have a point of view. Just naturally, we have my own point of view. So that the clinging within that perspective that we each hold, so through concretizing or solidifying both outer phenomena and the mind within us, through reifying or concretizing those two things, we end up with self-cherishing, cherishing of the sense of self. And there, so and so because our perspective, our point of view has a mistake in it, then our conduct, our behavior also becomes mistaken. And so we end up being primarily concerned with ourselves, with our own situation, with our own well-being, and we don't really think about all sentient beings. And the courage to think in that way about all sentient beings doesn't happen, and that is a mistake. So that kind of view that we normally have is there's a mistake in it. It's incorrect, wouldn't you say? What does it mean to say that something is? What does it mean to say something is incorrect? It's like if we don't know how things fundamentally are, how they truly are, then there's a certain lack of knowledge, there's a certain ignorance in that. So within ignorance, there's an aspect of the ignorance which doesn't know the natural peace and happiness that abides just within the mind. And so, the normal phenomena of the sense experiences that we have, things that we see and hear and taste and touch, the raw sense experiences we have, we don't see what their true nature is. We don't see the true reality right in front of us. So not just that fundamental ignorance, but then, so many different kinds of thoughts and concepts are generated by the mind, and then we get very confused by that as well.
출소되라 아니 미다비랑실라 딱반진 출당.
So within our confusion, we take what is fundamentally transient and impermanent, and we fix it as something solid and lasting.
미장비랑실라 짱마진 출당.
Things that are fundamentally not clean and pure, and we take them to be clean and pure.
동해비랑실라 대완진비 출당.
Something that's, has the actual nature of poisons, like the 5 poisons, we take it to be pleasurable and a source of happiness.
대창말로 존이데 다 매발라 딱든지니 출용두 아니 대샤 셰당 디묵 낙심 느심 록다 차도라 소바 아니 지용도아.
So all of that, all of these kinds of confusion, really come from taking what is not self to be self, what is not an identity to be an identity. And from that, we get lust, and we get aversion, and we get delusion, and we get jealousy, and pride, and ill will, and animosity, and wrong views, and so many things like that.
아니 쌤들 정보매바체.
And we also lose the honesty of our mind.
랑초 착비 신초 당비로 아니 단념질로 딘디지 정보매비 니수응하네 아니 동에 좋다 매바지 용대바지.
And so through sort of, being attached to what we consider mine, my side, and through, aversion and animosity towards the other side, our enemies and so on, and then just taking no interest in everything else and all the rest, we just kind of generate a lot of suffering, and we continue to experience that suffering.
대성자 딘디기 쌤데 아니 제주시니 아니 코랑기 짜와 렌지 머릭바라니 렌지 머릭바 라사데 마라 짜와치 제주 야부지 제와이나 아니 콜로브르바 여바다 코 빵주 여바다 아니 제발지 레오브스러와.
So if we really examine that mind, that kind of ignorance that we have, then we'll come to see that there's a kind of ignorance that just arises, each moment together with experience, some kind of co-emergent confusion that keeps arising each moment with our experience. And we'll also come to understand that that kind of confusion is temporary. It's not inherent in the nature, actually. And so we can come to understand and see that.
딘디지 박샤데 체코와 토마메바니 싸와 인장 가솔라 라먹어봐 아니 지금 다샤셰단 디묵라야디 앙아쇼조여 되바지 용되기도.
And so because of being the imprints from samsara's beginning of that type of basic confusion, then naturally, of course, we have desire, we have anger, and we have delusion. They just come naturally from that.
앙아도 쌤이 랑지 데 쌤 차루 전 탈뚝 쌤이 랑지 저인데 안 딘디기 동행다 그rum메바.
So when we talk about the nature of mind, the really subtle, true nature of mind, by going subtler and subtler and subtler until we really find the authentic nature of the mind itself, that subtle inner nature, though, is never contaminated by any of those things.
이때는 쌤 살바 아니 대와 안직 마셀바 하야메바 마트바 하야메바 강달 쌤 랑지 게 쌤이 탈뚝 랑지 게 랑중데 아니 베 쌤이 랑지 여 세와 라두 니 동에 짜네메바 아니 코랑기 ngola 아니 군조비기 차이여바 참말로와 아니 닭반바직 대반바직 게 딘디기 짜침보지 나초 아니 롱줘야 요서와.
And so in that nature, that final, ultimate nature, then there's it's lucid. It's clear. There's no suffering at all, actually, in that nature. Nothing is unclear. Nothing, is problematic. There's no suffering whatsoever. So yes, we can say that there's happiness and bliss there. And, from that perspective as well, even all the relative phenomena, all relative appearances can be seen or experienced in a way that is pure and that is also blissful.
제상 산진 좀 된디 아니 탑케바 tukje chimbo 디게 당보 아니 가서 심진 참말라라 아니 중고 당보 고용도 동해 ngo즈 아니 동해 빵주여가 ngo즈 아니 근중 ngo즈 동해 빵주여바데 동해 대랑지 마줘봐 근중여봐 근중대야 레지 근중다 뉴몬베 근중대도 ngo즈 되니 곡대 ngo즈 곡대스나 심이 랑신데 아니 동해당 아니 남양 가져를 대롱매봐 동해당 남양 직 대롱매봐 아니 곡배 땜발라를 동해 창말로와 동해 릭트도데 아니 직 로버바인데봐 아니 심이 랑신 타투테 곡배 땜발라를 아니 배 신드니 시대 바식지 ngo즈 대토발라 아니 시대 용량이 차진 주다 제 이게 아니 데즈티 ngo즈네 람데 ngo즈 람이니슬라 동의 용치지 주다 젠창마 제주치 대 용르당 대화 용치지 주다 젠 제주치 대 망르당 갈래라 데니 로브르바디 갈래 매바 창도 타뚝 아니 랑중기 심데 제용도 아니 상 뉴몬이 상 아니 용수조바랑 딘리기 타르바 하고도 아니 랑기 줄라 아니 년중 넘버 타고지 코르베 시비 편조라 년중 넘버 타고지 제야 아니 소소 타르바 되니 디 타르바 톰도지로요 자침부이마 데니 디파 카페용도 심지어 탐지랑 지송 인장 심지어 탐지라 딘지 아니 대외연데 아니 동인당 제비 대외연데 자침부 톱주요와 찍바 인장 안 될라 니질 안 매워 제야 아니 심지
So, in this regard, our teacher, the extraordinary enlightened Buddha Shakyamuni, the great teacher that we all have, taught the first turning of the wheel of the Dharma. And in the context of that teaching, taught us to recognize suffering. Suffering, he introduced what is suffering. He taught us to recognize that, and that it's something that we can overcome. He didn't teach that suffering was permanent. He taught that it had a cause. And then we have the cause of suffering. It comes from causes and conditions. It's a dependent phenomena, suffering. And what was the cause that he taught? He taught the cause to be karma and afflictive emotions. That's where the suffering came from. And he also taught the truth of that suffering can cease, the truth of cessation. And the truth of cessation is in the nature of our mind. It is actually referring to the nature of our mind. He taught that as a way to introduce the peace and happiness that fundamentally exists within the nature of our mind. In an ultimate way, he introduced that by talking about how suffering can end. So that is what we need to attain, what we can attain, is the peace and happiness that naturally abides in our own nature. And then, in order to arrive at that place of recognizing our own nature, to experience the peace and happiness that naturally abides there, he taught how to get there. He taught the truth of the path. In the truth of the path, he emphasized that the causes of suffering should be reduced. The causes of happiness should be increased. How that works when we do that, what the result of reducing our own suffering is, what the result of increasing the causes of happiness is. And then, that leads to a sense of disenchantment with, the confusion of samsara, a sense of renunciation. And that isn't just about, giving up on something. It also involves understanding that liberation and enlightenment is something possible. And so the yearning for that, the wish for being liberated, to awaken, the wish for awakening, is born at that time.
Thank you, Khandro. Such a nice description of these high practices connected straight to the Buddhist teaching. So nice.